Suicide in Native American Communities by Lynn Stratman. In the novel There by Tommy Orange, there's a character, Jackie Redfeather, who is at a suicide convention that I wanted to share an excerpt from the novel. That made me really interested in this topic of suicide. I also have an excerpt on page 139 that I liked for the way it engaged the reader to think about their own part in relationship to the issues such as suicide that Native Americans are plagued with. So if you were fortunate enough to be born into a family whose ancestors directly benefited from genocide and or slavery, maybe you think the more you don't know, the more innocent you can stay. And then this quote I wanted to share is from page 104. What I'm here to talk about is how our whole approach since day one has been like this. Kids are jumping out of windows of burning buildings, falling to their deaths, and we think the problem is that they're jumping. This is what we've done. We've tried to find ways to get them to stop jumping, convince them that burning alive is better than leaving when it gets too hot for them to take. We've boarded up windows and made better nets to catch them. We found more convincing ways to tell them not to jump. They are making the decision that it is better to be dead and gone than to be alive, and what we have here, this life, the one we made for them, the one they've inherited. In doing some of my own further research on the statistics of suicide, I learned that the general population in the United States, of which is made up of about 2% of Native Americans, with an average of suicide rates 1.5 times the rate of the rest of the population, and that those suicides are mainly in young adult males ages 15 to 24. According to the CDC, the suicide rates are not getting better and decreasing, but are actually increasing in the Native population with the ages between 35 to 64. This is an urgent problem that needs attention because it's clearly not getting better. Here are just some facts and risk factors that are tied to suicide rates in the Native American community. Firearms are often linked to death by suicide. Physical and sexual abuse, addictions, unequal rights, unequal access to resources, opportunities, and isolation and lack of social connections, as well as lower socioeconomic and social conditions, all are impacting these high rates of suicide. What Tommy Orange and further research has taught us is that it is the intertwinement of lower socioeconomic status, structural racism, and the marginalization of Native Americans in society that have an impact on their access to resources. This idea that prevention is the only way that we can help with suicide rates is an approach that needs to become interdisciplinary. It needs to be able to tackle this wider problem that's much more complex than alcohol and depression, mental health issues. It's involving socioeconomic status, isolation, and lack of resources.